Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the All Grit podcast. I am your host, Reed Schneider, alongside my co-host, Danny Gilbert.
What up, y'all?
So we've been kind of brainstorming this podcast up for a while, so glad to actually be doing it. Me and Danny are both passionate Lions fans, so this podcast will primarily be about the Lions, a lot of other football-centric stuff, especially with mock draft season, all that kind of stuff coming up. But today it's pretty simple, guys. There's a lot to talk about in the world of the Detroit Lions, as there's two pretty big names that we are in the legit betting favorites to land. So, with all that being said, let's just jump right into it. Danny, what do you think about the possibility of the Lions trading for Myles Garrett?
Man, Myles Garrett. What a beast, bro. I am salivating at the mouth thinking about Myles Garrett being in the Honolulu Blue. I will say, obviously, it'd come with a price. And that price would be a couple first rounders, most likely. And that would be just us giving up that for basically 2 years. I mean, the chances of us extending Garrett after having to pay Hutch, Kirby Joseph, most likely, and then obviously players like Branch, it'd be that we'd be able to extend Garrett. I know Garrett has talked about how he's willing to make it work to be on a contending team for the Super Bowl. So I mean that could go our way, but still, we're gonna have cap issues regardless. So we really only have him for 2 years. But man, would that help for a push to the Super Bowl? So I would be okay with going for Garrett. I think even if you get an edge rusher in the draft, obviously he's not going to be to Garrett's standard, But at the same time, you're giving up a lot for Garrett, and again, it's only for short-term success. So personally, I could go either way. But man, would it be amazing to see Garrett on the Lions?
I'm with you, Danny. I wish we had a little more of an entertaining debate here, but man, I'm with you. Brad Holmes has shown us that he has been able to draft very well. So I'm not of the mind where it's like F them picks mentality. But at the same time, this is really our last legitimate people. We kept saying that. This was the last year. This was the last year. This is our best shot, right? Our Super Bowl window, I believe, and call me crazy, I think it legitimately not necessarily closes, but it gets a whole lot tighter after this year. Because after this year, you got contracts with Hutchinson you'll have to figure out, Kirby Joseph you'll have to figure out, Brian Branch you'll have to figure out. You got guys like Laporta and Gibbs will be on the horizon, Jameson Williams will be on the horizon, and then all your guys you just paid this year will start to kick in. I believe Penei Sewell doesn't kick in this season, it's next season, correct? That would be him and St. Brown both kick in next season, or is it this coming season where their contracts kick in, like their extensions?
I believe with the fifth year that you're right, that it would be like the following season.
But St. Brown would start this year then, correct? Because this would be his, because he was drafted in 21.
Yes.
So, okay, yeah, so it starts to get pretty tight, man. I mean, paying Goff, his cap hit stays pretty consistent, but it's still a high cap hit. I mean, you're going to have Sewell, Hutch, Saint, also McNeil, all these guys you paid. It's going to really start to linger. I mean, this year you really didn't feel any of it because they were still playing basically on rookie contracts. That's why as of right now, today, I saw something. We have like a top 10 cap space in the league heading into free agency, which, great. But you also kind of have to realize you're playing with house money at that point because, in 6-8 months' time, that money all gets pretty well tied up. So I think this is your offseason. If you want to make a splash, you absolutely have to. During the season, when this was brought up about trading for him or Max Crosby, I was very much so against it, which hindsight's 2020. I kind of wish you would have made a move like that, right? Because no hate to Zadarius Smith. He really wasn't that difference maker we needed him to be. So, I've definitely had to change of opinion. I'd like to see them make a splash, especially at the edge position. That's just a position that's so valuable. You can't have too many good defensive linemen, especially pass rushers, guys that can just change a game. And I mean, all jokes aside, if you have Aiden Hutchinson and Myles Garrett coming off the edge, if a guy like Kirby Joseph were to walk, it's not the end of the world because all of a sudden your secondary almost becomes, I don't want to say, buffed out and not helped out, but kind of just helped out. I mean, you don't have to have quite the secondary when you have two of the best pass rushers, arguably in the entire league, playing on the same defensive line.
Well, yeah, you make a good point, man. Like there's just no possible way that you double both. Even if you do, you still have a guy like Aleem McNeil up the middle. And so at that point, I mean, quarterbacks probably have 3 seconds tops to read the coverage before they got either Hutch or Garrett in their face. So yeah, the secondary would not be as important if you do make this move, which is why, like, obviously a guy like Carlton Davis, there's just no way that you pay him if you get Garrett. Um, and that's tough to say. Carlton Davis had an amazing year. You did just give a third rounder for him. But again, if you got that pressure on the edge, man, you'll be good. You'll be good.
Agreed. And I will say, I think you and I are kind of the same thought process here. I still think if you trade for a guy like Myles Garrett, you still need to draft an edge player. Not necessarily in this first or second anymore, but this edge class is so talented, and we will get more into this in the next episode when we do our first mock drafts of the year. But this edge class is so talented, and it goes you legitimately can probably get a edge rusher in the 5th round that is a quality player, not necessarily a starter, but a quality player with a lot of upside. Um, but yeah, with that being said, I think, and Dan, let me throw a hypothetical out here to you. I saw this floated around online, a couple different trades for Myles Garrett. These are the two that I thought I personally liked the best, but one of them I don't think you'll love. So I want to kind of float these out here to you. The one I saw was our first this year, pick number 28, our first next year, and then Hendon Hooker for Myles Garrett, which I think that's a pretty no brainer. But I just want to see your opinion on that.
I yeah, I personally I would do that. I mean, we're picking pretty late into the first round, right? So I mean, that with that and then finding value for Hendon Hooker, I don't know how good he's going to be. I mean, he's got good rushing upside. I feel like he has somewhat of a hard time to read the field. He's just not comfortable in the pocket yet at an NFL level, which is why he's rushing a bunch. You see it in the pregame or like the preseason games. And so, if you find any value for Hendon Hooker, I think that would be a good deal.
Agreed. I liked Hendon Hooker coming out of Tennessee a couple of years ago. I wasn't super high in the pick back then just because of the fit, especially now that we picked Goff. I'm still not super high on the fit just because we paid Jared Goff. You drafted a backup quarterback in the 3rd round, and I don't know the exact circumstances, but something tells me that if you're signing Teddy Bridgewater out of retirement and playing him in a playoff game over Hendon Hooker, you're probably either not thrilled with his development, or maybe there is an interesting behind the scenes, but it tells me they're probably not thrilled with his development. So I wonder what his actual trade value would be. I mean, he was considered to be a top 3 quarterback in that class before he tore his ACL. Probably would have won the Heisman if he would have tore his ACL. I'd be interested to see what the league values him at. But if you could somehow package him and I get 2 firsts a lot, it's mortgaging your future. But like you and I talked about, Danny, I think you kind of have to make that move. I mean, a lot of these teams that have been so great in winning Super Bowls, they make those moves. Look at the Rams a couple of years ago. I mean, like they mortgaged their future to get Stafford, and before the Stafford run when they had Goff, still they mortgaged their future to get guys like Von Miller, like Jalen Ramsey. I mean, to an extent, teams that draft well have the longevity, but teams that win and win now have to invest in now. And that's a now move. I mean, like you said, you probably don't pay him after his contract runs out. You probably let him walk. But for 2 years, you have the best edge duo in the league, and it's not even close.
Yeah. Yep, that's valid, man. That is valid.
So the second trade, and I wasn't sure how much you'd like this one, so that's why I wanted to ask you before we move on to the other news with Cooper Kupp. This one was a first this year, a third this year, and Kirby Joseph.
Oh man. Um, yeah, that one's a little bit more harder to stomach. I mean, you only when you draft a player, obviously Brad Holmes done an amazing job bringing in great guys who have developed. They've had great starts to their career. Kirby Joseph is no exception to that. Um, but when you have a proven player like that, it's man, it's really hard to let him go. Obviously, if cap's an issue, that's one thing. But man, with giving up a first already and a 3rd round pick, man, especially with Brad Holmes, dude, he excels in that day 2 of the draft. It'd be really hard to let go of Kirby. But I don't know, man. Garrett is special. I guess it really depends on how much, like how long Brad Holmes would be planning on keeping Kirby if he doesn't go for Garrett. Uh, yeah, we'd have to see, man. I have a harder time saying yes to that one.
Yeah,
I
no,
guess
I get that. That's I agree. It's tough because I personally am a huge fan of Kirby Joseph. I loved him coming out of the draft a couple of years ago, and to see him succeed and kind of like that first, like one of those like first pillars, like what the success of this team has been. Like I don't think anyone will ever forget the game where he picked off Rodgers to seal eliminate not even like we made the playoffs, we eliminated the Packers, but that week 17, week 18 game a couple of years ago, man, that was kind of like the turning point of our culture, our team. And he's a huge part of that. So I agree with you. It definitely would be tough to say goodbye to him, but I do think to what extent here can you keep everyone you can't? You know, I don't think necessarily that he has to be one of like the casualties of that if you could make a contract work with him. But I could see him being a casualty to that. Safety is a position that traditionally isn't valued as high. I could totally see Kirby Joseph wanting a big contract, which not that he doesn't deserve it, but traditionally safeties don't get paid that premier money. And I could see him being one of the guys that's exception to that rule. And I have a feeling if we don't shell out the cash, someone definitely would. And personally, I love Kirby. I think it's more important to keep Brian Branch long term of those two safeties, just because Brian Branch can do so much in the nickel, as even like kind of like the in the box safety can play a little bit of coverage, but just kind of plays like almost three different positions in one player. Kirby, love him, but he's kind of one trick pony. He plays, center field for us, or he plays that more that traditional free safety coverage role. And I could see him being if that's your mindset as Brad Holmes is, I can take this guy that we're not going to be able to afford and flip him to get a guy like Myles Garrett. I could see that aspect of the argument, but man, I'm with you, Danny. It's a tough one. I personally, knowing what we know right now, I'd be leaning towards doing it.
I get that, man. Um, I mean, it's hard to say. Kirby Joseph, I swear, just every year he's taking a step forward, taking another step forward, taking another step forward, man. And it's just hard to see like what his ceiling would be. I mean, it could be correlating with the team success. It could be he's the reason why the team's guy. You never know how much of an impact he has on the defense. You never know how much of like how much of on a leadership perspective he has on the defense. But at the same time, man, if you lose this opportunity with Myles Garrett and you let him go to say,
The
I
Packers,
don't, I don't, yeah, Packers is a huge one, and they're somewhat of a
the
contender. Uh,
Eagles.
I didn't want to, I didn't want to throw out the Eagles, but man, add to their strengths. If he got on the Eagles, man, it'd be really hard to beat them, really hard to come out on the NFC, on top of the NFC, or obviously you go to the Bills, man. Imagine trying to beat the Bills with Myles Garrett, dude. It just you gotta try to box out the other teams
Yeah, see,
and
it almost becomes a game of playing defense with a guy like that, just so you don't just so you don't have to play him twice a year in the division. But like you said, almost like you don't have to play him in the NFC Championship or in the Super Bowl.
100%. I mean, there's a reason why he's had so many All Pros. Reason why he's been Defensive Player of the Year, Walter Player Man of the Year. He's legit, man. He's a whole different breed.
I
Um,
think there's a legit argument to me that he's the best defensive player in the planet right now. So I mean, yeah, I agree 100%. He's a legitimate Hall of Fame talent. I mean,
right,
honestly, it makes you wonder why Cleveland would let him go. I mean, let him out the building even because I mean, I don't know. I mean, not that he hasn't demanded a trade, but you'd think Cleveland could do something to sweeten the deal there a little bit for him. But looks like they haven't. It looks like he's going to be going somewhere this offseason. So why not Detroit, right?
right, right.
So I think we'll close on that with Myles Garrett because I think we're both in the consensus where, it's going to cost you. And as Lions fans, I've seen a lot of hypothetical trades that are just to be blunt, terrible from Lions fans because we think that it's like mad and we can finesse the system. It's not. It's if you want a player like Myles Garrett, you're gonna have to pay the ransom for him. It's how it is. A lot of teams have done this. A lot of teams have had success. But a lot of teams have gotten bitten in the butt by it, right? But it's the game you have to play if you want to compete. I think right now, especially with a right now player, love these guys in the draft. They could be getting like a Shamar Stewart, a Mike Green at the back end of the first round. None of them are even remotely close to Myles Garrett. I'm not saying that none of them could be close to that type of player in a couple of years, because I think there's a lot of guys in this draft that could be legitimate studs, but none of them are Myles Garrett. So it kind of comes down to that, man. I mean, let us know down in the comments below what you guys think of this. Be interested to see what Lions fans' opinions are, but it seems like the consensus is Brad Holmes make it happen. But I think we also have to temper our expectations and be realistic about what it's going to cost us. So with that being said, let's move on to the other perennial All-Pro that's been mentioned and linked to the Lions here as of late in trade rumors, and Cooper Kupp. What do you make of this one, Danny?
No, Cooper Kupp, he's obviously a very gritty player. He is I don't believe that he is fallen off as much as maybe his stats may portray in this season. Obviously, he's been dealing with injuries here and there. But I mean, Cooper Kupp on any team would make a great addition. Obviously, not as big of an impact as Garrett, and receiver is not as big of a need as secondary edge rusher would be. So I wouldn't be as eager to get a trade done. At the same time, though, receiver like Cooper Kupp at his age, and given that the organization has already come out and said that they will trade him, they don't want him on the team, the value for Cooper Kupp would probably be pretty good. And given that we have so many day 3 picks, I figured that we could probably get something done with Cooper Kupp if need be.
Agreed. The value with Cooper Kupp is definitely more friendly. You could probably get him. I was looking at our picks right now. We've got first, second, third, fourth. Then we have a 6 and 3/7. You could probably get Cooper Kupp for a 6th and a 7th, or a 6th and 2/7, or a 6th and next year 5. Um, his value isn't super high. Call it what it is. He's gonna have a big cap hit. He's an aging veteran player. Now that he's not great, because I agree with you, Danny. I think that people have painted this narrative that he's just fallen off, and he hasn't. He's still a very good player. He's the best abilities availability, and he hasn't had that in the last few years, really since they won the Super Bowl. Played 12 games this year, about 700 yards and like 6-7 touchdowns. Great when he's on the field, but he got to stay on the field. I personally am in favor of this slightly. I wouldn't be over the moon, but I wouldn't hate it. My thought process is with this move is not necessarily the value in terms of the assets to give up for him. It's the financial investment in him now. Because he's going to have a few more years in the contract, and you're going to be paying him upwards of $20 million a year. And for a third option, maybe fourth option on an offense, I don't think that really fits what we need right now. If you're going to be making that significant investment, I'd rather make it in a proven guy who really hasn't missed much time, and a guy that's going to be legitimately premier at their position and make a bigger impact. Because, I mean, call it what it is, Cooper Kupp be playing like Tim Patrick's role for us. Not that he wouldn't probably get some more looks than Tim Patrick did, but what you can only have so many mouths to feed in that offense.
Right, right. Um, yeah, I just coming down to cap, man, you make a good point. I would definitely much rather our money go towards either the edge position or the corner position. Um, I don't know what the cap hit would be for Cooper Kupp personally. Um, I mean, obviously we got a bunch of offensive weapons. Um, with the new OC, it'd be curious to see how each position, like how much of the offense is weighed towards that position, how each position is affected by new OC, man. But at the end of the day, Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp, man. And if he's healthy, man, is he a force to be reckoned with on the field? Um, so I can go either way. It kind of goes with Garrett too. I don't mean to. I know we already kind of closed off that section, but like at the end of the day, if Garrett was to go to whoever, specifically in like the AFC, we still get the draft capital. It's not like we lose out on that, and I trust Brad Holmes to make the right decision. So
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I definitely feel more inclined to make the Myles Garrett move, just because I think it's a bigger splash, but it really has to be, because there is a legitimate chance that if you have Myles Garrett on that team is winning, not making, winning a Super Bowl. Cooper Kupp, I can't say the same thing, because last year we didn't lose because of a lack of weapons. You know what I mean? I mean, Khalif Raymond and Tim Patrick were both pretty productive. I know Tim Patrick's a free agent, so obviously it depends on what your stance is on him. I don't think his market value would be anything insane. So I would like to hope that they can work out a contract to keep him around. But I mean, Cooper Kupp, there's no doubt about it. He's still a premier receiver if he's healthy, and him and Goff having that previous repertoire. I mean, I think that kind of plays into it. You saw the success that Josh Reynolds, who really isn't, I don't think, a great receiver. I mean, Goff trusts him, and I think trust goes along with Jared Goff, and you can see that finally the guys like JMO have earned that trust, and you can see just the levels and difference it makes with their performance. Goff, Goff needs to build some connection with somebody before he starts to really rip it to him, and you saw JMO's career really take off this year. Part of it was being healthy all year, right, and being on the field for most of the year, but I mean, it just takes time, I think, to build that, and getting a guy that already has that level of connection, that level of chemistry, I guess you'd say. I mean, it's worth something. I would agree, but personally, I don't really think we need to be in on Cooper Kupp like we do Myles Garrett. I would almost feel like if we punt on Myles Garrett and try and trade for Cooper Kupp for a sixth and a seventh, I'd almost feel like you're kind of just doing that to keep the fans interested more than anything. Which, not to say like that's what they're doing, but it just kind of feels like a consolation prize. And I think Myles Garrett needs to be the move, and if that's not the move you make, I just think you kind of sit pat with what you do and be a little more aggressive in free agency. But I don't think the financial investment is worth it with Cooper Kupp necessarily, unless he comes in and he was to take a pay cut. That's a whole different conversation. Right now, we're just assuming his contract the way it is right now.
That's right, man. That's right. I mean, it would it would most definitely be like a match made in heaven if had if we didn't have JMO or we didn't have St. Brown. I mean, like you were saying, the connection is everything. Um, the having a trust between a quarterback and a receiver just pays dividends, man. And obviously, you can see it in the stats. You also just see it in the game, man. Being on the same track with the quarterback just leads to so much more success, more than people realize, more than the score may show. It just leads to more first downs, more yards, and ultimately more points. But yeah, kind of like I said earlier, though, um, and what you were getting at, it's just the cap, man. We're gonna have a lot of extensions that we're gonna need to find a place, find a rhyme or rhythm with, and add into the offense, which is already well taken care of. Would just I don't want to say be redundant, but it would definitely not be pouring water on the fire that is the defensive needs that we have. So
Agreed, 100% agreed. Kind of feels like you almost just I don't know. It feels like it'd be. I feel like every Lions fan with a brain cell would sit there and be like, "Cool, we got Cooper Kupp. What's the contract look like, and what's our plan on defense?" Because you almost have to look at it like Cooper Kupp be a free agent acquisition, because the draft capital is very minimal, right? But the financial investment in him would be pretty big for what we have right now in terms of cap room and contracts. So you almost have to look at that as that's 20 million less we can spend on a defensive player, a corner, a safety, a edge rusher, you know what I mean? Like, so I think it's just you'd have to trust Brad Holmes to make it work either way. I'm personally a little more against that than I would say for it, but it wouldn't hurt my heart either way. I trust what they're doing. Honestly, that's this regime has earned that. I think with most people, a lot of people wrote them off after losing the Commanders. I know you and I really haven't. I mean, this is a team that is very much so different than the team we grew up watching. I have faith that they will make it work regardless.
right. I mean, man, they had a historic number of injuries. I mean, it's very easy for people to diss on the defense, like, oh man, they can't stop nothing. But I mean, some of these guys, man, they picked up from their 9 to 5 at Meyer. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying?
yeah.
It's
I
just
think I saw one of them at Aldi working the other day.
Right, exactly. It's just, I mean, given what they had, they did their best. They got 15 wins in the regular season. They played amazing, especially in that the the ending of the season with the Vikings. That defense really came together. But I mean, there's only so much duct tape you can put on before it all just comes crumbling down. The defense that we had in the beginning of the year is a whole lot different than we had at the end of the year. Um, but yeah, going back to Cooper Cup though, I don't mean to look at this black and white, but now I'm thinking more about this. If it really came down to it, I wouldn't cry if we got Cooper Cup. But if it was between having Cooper Cup and spending the money for him or keeping Carlton Davis, I would 100% lean towards Carlton Davis. Um, so I that's where my heart would be. I think he definitely proved himself this year. So again, thinking to it, I would lean with Carlton.
Agreed 100%. I mean, that's kind of like the point I was trying to make is it's just it's less assets, right? I mean, whether it's draft capital, for Myles Garrett, more talking about the draft capital, just because you wouldn't have to obviously go out and spend the money in edge rusher, right? I mean, or even a corner, but you Cooper Cup, you're almost kind of like you still have your needs on defense and you're taking up significant financial assets. So, with all that being said, guys, thank you so much for listening. This has been a great time, Danny. Thank you for being on, and we're looking forward to making some more content here for you guys. Hopefully about once a week, maybe twice a week, depending on time. I know with free agency coming up, me and Danny have talked. We're gonna try and be as on top of the news as we absolutely can to get you guys the content. And in the comments down below, let us know what you guys think here of both of these scenarios. I know we'll probably have different opinions, so it'd just be nice to hear some different opinions in the comments. But guys, thank you so much for listening. I was Reed Schneider. This was
All grit.
All Grit, baby. All right, cool. See you guys later.